He was the powerhouse of international wrestling. He was the top star. He was the champion for most of his time there. He was charismatic. He would sell for the heel during the match, and he would just power him up at the end and win. I mean, he was such a great performer, and he was that big and strong guy. He wasn't the clean baby face like Rick Martel was, or even like the Rougeau were, but he was that strong, powerful baby face that you just want to be like, So I mean, he was the one that really hooked me up to wrestling when I first started watching when I was 6 years old, and so we always say that our favorite wrestler of all time is always the one that we grew up with, or sometimes it is, and to me Dino Bravo was is one of my favorites because of that. I mean, him and Rick Martel would be booked. They were the two biggest singles babyface in the territory. One was coming from Montreal, Rick Martel from Quebec City. And I mean, it's pretty much the feud between Quebec City and Montreal is pretty much, I don't know, like Boston and New York or something like this. And both of them would have a few matches against each other, and then Bravo would come and help Martel against the heels. So you would have the two baby faces, joining force, pretty much like the Mega Powers did with Savage and Hogan a few years later. They were we didn't know about the Mega Powers then, but they were like our Mega Powers, before even the term existed. So I mean, Bravo was just that huge superstar here, and yeah, I mean, he was really the total package to a guy like me when I first started watching wrestling. So and I mean, he had started before that, but obviously I was too young. But I mean, he traveled a lot even before getting to WWF. He wrestled in the Mid-Atlantic. He wrestled. I mean, he had that bloody match with Abdullah the Butcher in Japan. That's been one of the most favorite tape that tape traders were exchanging back in the 80s and early 90s. So I mean, he really had a very good all-around career. It just sad that when he switched to WWF at the time they didn't use him. He didn't. How can I say that? He didn't really show what he really was when he was in Montreal, and maybe that's all right. Maybe Montreal was a special place, or was the right place for him to be that superstar. And I'm just thrilled that I was able to see him as such.
No, that's really cool, and I got to tell you something. I think I might be a little bit French-Canadian because I'm also a gigantic Rick Martel fan, and he's pretty much on the top of the bucket list for the guest for me on this show because I love the way he worked in the ring. I feel like everything he did was, whether he was a heel or babyface, it would look real. It looked like he was invested, whether it was a character or whether it was just a match. I love Rick Martel, but with Dino Bravo, and not to bring the dark side over here, but obviously his death being very controversial and very, very brutal. Do you think that his death really was that a blow to the French-Canadian wrestling scene? I know he was kind of past. No, you don't think it was?
They were not. By the time he passed away, by the time he was killed, I mean, there were no. The scene was pretty much WWF. It was in 1993. He was. I mean, WWF had took over for a few years now. I mean, the only French Canadian on the big scene where Jacques Rougeau, Pierre-Carl Ouellet, Rick Martel was still wrestling. But I mean, it didn't affect the scene at all. But it did affect, Bravo's legacy because, obviously his death was related to the mob and to everything he was doing here. It was cigarette smuggling and all that. And I mean, you have to see it this way. Dino Bravo was a big spender. I mean, money was no object for Dino. He had the big house, the big cars. Nothing was big enough. He didn't see it coming. I mean, when he was fired by WWF, or not fired, but he was let go, he didn't see it coming. He thought he would have that job forever, and he was making tons of money for WWF. But he was spending as such. So he wasn't really good with money. And when his career was over, well, what do? You have a big house, you have a big cars, and you need to make a lot of money, and there's not a lot of things when you've been a wrestler all your life that you can really do if you don't have any education and anything else. His family was mob related. His mother's brother was one of the used to be one of the top guy in the mob here in Montreal. So that was the easy way out for him, to start dealing cigarettes with some of the gangs here in Montreal, and sometimes you pissed off the wrong people, and when you're into that world, you never know when it's gonna end. And unfortunately for him, it ended earlier than anyone would have thought. So that's the choice. That's the choices he decided to make. But that's the backstory behind why he got involved with this in the first place. And it didn't last long, unfortunately.